Hello.
Hello.
Hey, how do I sound?
Hi. You sound fine to me.
Okay.
How do I sound?
You sounded very sensual a moment ago. Hello.
Well, that's my default state, and I just have to turn it off for the show.
Oh, don't turn it off for me, by all means. Now you're obligated to talk that way for the rest of the podcast.
I don't even know what it means. I mean, all right.
We could make this an ASMR podcast.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was just about to start scratching on the windshield.
Oh, yeah.
Hi. How are you today?
Good morning.
It's so nice to be here.
Are you into that ASMR stuff at all?
No, I've listened to it just out of curiosity, but it's not something I'd go back to tickle my fancy or help me fall asleep or anything like that.
Yeah. I consider myself somewhat of an ASMR hipster because I came across it in the fall of 2013. It was right when I started university, and I used it to fall asleep when my roommates were having very loud parties next door.
Okay. But having really quiet audio is not going to block out a party next door. So how did it help?
It was a factor of things. I had like blankets. I was in like a bunk bed, so I had blankets draped around the bunk bed and doors closed and like over-ear headphones. I don't think they were noise canceling, but I in my early years of college, actually almost all of college, wow, I had to be at work at like 4 a.m. for various jobs. Oof. So I was never a late night partier, but I had a roommate for a couple of years who very much was, and him and I would butt heads quite a bit because he'd be bringing people over to the apartment and playing loud music at like midnight. I'm like, I gotta be up in like 3 hours to get to work.
Yeah, that's awful. What was your go-to sensory experience? Auditory experience?
This is gonna actually I don't know how this is gonna come across. My go-to ASMR YouTube channel back then, it was a channel called Massage ASMR, and it was an Australian guy doing all of the videos. And so now doing this podcast with you is like listening to that.
All right. I'll try and transport you back to the fall of 2013.
Uh-huh.
It puts the lotion on its skin.
No.
This isn't working?
I don't think it would ever work coming from you, James. I know you too well. It's just weird.
Yep. Much better to listen to a stranger.
I have a very James-esque setup today, now that I'm fully moved into my parents' house and recording from my childhood bedroom. I've got a Blue Yeti. I'm back on my Blue Yeti, and a pillow behind it, and that's about the extent of my audio setup now.
I mean, what else does one need?
Well,
you're at like 90% audio quality. Everything else here is just, 1 or 2% on top.
I mean, I agree that there's diminishing returns, but it makes me feel more professional when I have a nice mic on a boom arm and I'm in a room full of sound deadening material. Now I feel very much like I'm sitting in the exact same spot that I was sitting when I gave my first impression on the iPad announcement 12 years ago. And I was very wrong back then. I said it was a blown up iPod Touch and it was going to fail.
And look where we are now.
Look where we are now. I have my show notes on an iPad.
What is holding up the Yeti? Is it just on its little stand?
Yeah, it's on the stand it comes with.
How is that near your mouth? Are you on your stomach?
No, it's my laptop and the Blue Yeti are sitting on like a bedside table, and I have a dining room chair and I've like have my legs spread so that I can actually sit in front of this bedside table and talk into the microphone. Because of course my desks are long gone from this room.
Yeah. Well, right now it doesn't sound too bad.
But I've got a audio problem, like a podcasting studio setup problem to solve in the nearest future. I think I'm 90% guaranteed at this point that I've purchased a house in the last 2 weeks.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I went through and I've done the offer. My offer was accepted. I've had the inspections already. No surprises on inspections. The only thing was that it needed a new roof, which I knew ahead of time. And luckily the sellers seem very amicable in doing. So they're already in the process of getting that redone, and I'm going to be closing on it next month.
A new roof seems like quite an undertaking, though.
I mean, yeah, we're talking. The estimate that my inspector gave is $10,000 to get a new roof put on.
Okay, it doesn't sound too bad then. What is this roof made from?
It would just be shingles. It's not like a clay tile roof or anything.
Okay.
So it's like
what is a
tar
shingle?
Shingles, you're going to look them up. They're like little, like I'd say about maybe a little smaller than a foot square piece of like tar with some rock on top of it. And you layer them on top of the roof to prevent water ingress.
Okay.
It's very standard here in the U.S.
It does look very much like a tile, but like a more compact tile, I suppose.
Right. Yeah. Not as fancy and a lot cheaper.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, congrats. When did you say you're moving in? A month or so?
Yeah, I'm supposed to close at the end of next month. So hopefully sometime around there. Although, since I'm already moved into my parents' house, I'm probably going to take a little extra time and stay here for at least a few weeks after I close to do things like repaint everything and put new carpet in and just do all the stuff that would be hard to do once my furniture's moved in.
And what has presented a podcasting problem for you?
Well, the cool thing about this house is it's got like an actual office. So I don't have to use one of the bedrooms as an office, which is what I've always done in my past houses. The problem with that is by using a bedroom as an office all the time, I've always had a closet that I could line with soundproof foam and use as my little podcast corner. But I've got no such corner in just this square room now. So I'm going to have to figure out probably either some kind of standalone podcast setup in that office or more likely find a space away from the office to use for my podcasting. So far, I'm eyeing like a cupboard under the stairs that I can line with soundproof foam and sit in there.
We'll just call you Harry going forwards.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be an easy space to line though, because it's probably quite small. But why not just soundproof the office?
It's right like off of the entryway in the living room. So I want it to be a little more presentable. And so I just don't think, unless I can find some like decorative soundproofing to put up around there, I just don't see it looking good.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can get colors and then tile them nicely, but they're going to clash with your mahogany desk no matter what.
Right, yeah. Need a big like executive desk.
That's right. Inkwell, desk pad, embossed.
Right. You joke, but I would love to have a desk like that if it was at all practical for computer work. But there's no way to put like 3 monitors on a desk like that and not clash.
I guess you just have to give up computing and return to the quill and the parchment.
That's right. Write code on parchment.
Get some OCR to send it into Xcode or...
There you go. Yeah, the iPhone has that built in now.
Quite slow. How's that? Oh, they're built in? Yeah. Just pointing the camera at it.
Yeah. In other exciting news in the US, it's not official yet, but it seems like we're progressing towards daylight savings time coming to an end in the very near future.
Oh, really?
Yeah, our Senate unanimously voted just earlier this week to stay permanently on daylight saving time, which would be the time we're on now.
To stay permanently on daylight savings, so you're always waking up earlier. So you're always getting more daylight at the end of the day.
Right, yep. In favor of later daylight than earlier.
Yeah, okay. Oh, that's cool. I believe Europe was doing something similar, or at least giving the countries the option of choosing, like the EU countries of choosing individually what they want to do, with the default being the daylight savings time.
Right. I'm kind of, like, if I really had my way, I would be in favor of, like, everyone just switching to Greenwich Mean Time, and kind of like the same way we treat seasons, right? Because, like, right now is what are we at, the end of your summer?
Mm-hmm.
And we're just getting into the beginning of my spring and summer. And kind of in that same way, as like we experience different seasons at the same time. The same time can mean different things to us. So like it could be, 9 a.m. all around the world right now. And for some people, 9 a.m. means nighttime, and some people it means morning.
That could be interesting. But then why wouldn't that apply to the seasons as well? Why wouldn't we just say, now is the end of summer, same for me, same for you?
Yeah, I guess that didn't hold up so well when I think about it, because yeah. But I don't know. I just think as far as like scheduling things, it'd be nice if everyone just was on the same time and just everyone knew what that meant for them.
I'm struggling to think of any downsides to it.
Right.
Besides, like, if I went to schedule something with you,
mm-hmm.
I would still have to look up when you were awake, because I couldn't just say, like, I'd schedule at 9 a.m. your time.
Oh, that's true.
If I was scheduling at 9 p.m. my time, well, so it would be 9 p.m. your time, but I wouldn't know which part of the day that was for you. It could be the middle of the night.
Yeah, I guess that would be maybe trickier to parse then. From the perspective of a software engineer who luckily doesn't have to deal with timestamps to much of an extent, I think I'm just trying to favor the easiest data as far as a computer goes.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, we've actually got a lot to talk about this week.
Yeah, there's a fair bit, isn't there?
It feels like it's been forever ago, but there was a whole Apple event between our last show and this one.
Yeah, we had the show, then we had an Apple event, and we've even had the devices ship and get to people's hands before we did another show.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you have all those devices in your sweet hot little hands now.
That's it. Yeah. All 4 of them. No, I've got none of them. What about you?
No, there was nothing that was going to appeal to me in that keynote.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We have already talked about that we had an event. So this was the first thing that came up in the event, which was Apple TV Plus. And we had a sizzle reel, lots of shows. Was there anything in there that jumped out to you?
I wish I could remember the name now. Luck or Lucky? Looked like it was a show from some of the Pixar animators who it sounded like they left and maybe started their own company or something. That looked like it could be good.
Does that have a dog in the poster by any chance?
I do not remember now. I just remember seeing it at the time and thinking, oh, that looked neat. Let's see, Apple TV Luck. I don't see anything about a dog. I see like clips with like a dragon and stuff.
Okay.
But what about you? Anything stand out to you?
No, nothing. Couldn't remember a single thing from it.
I know we decided on last show that we weren't going to do official predictions, but you definitely called out that I was going to start with a sizzle reel.
Point to me.
1 point for you. That's your 1 point of this keynote, James.
I guess the 1 point over you that I might get, because like we just jumping ahead, we got the iPhone we thought, we got the iPad we thought, and then everything else I was terribly wrong on. Mm-hmm. But you were pretty bang on if we didn't get some of the names, but certainly the descriptions of the devices. But that's jumping ahead. So the other thing in the TV Plus segment was sports. So Friday Night Baseball is coming to TV Plus. So that's going to be live streaming sport on TV Plus, which has certainly been rumored in the past, over the years that TV Plus has existed. And yeah, we a little taste of it.
Yeah, I'm certainly interested to see how this pans out. I don't know what it's like to stream uh, or watch in any capacity sports like over in Australia, but in the U.S., it's actually notoriously difficult because even if you pay for like a Major League Baseball, like their online subscription, or you get like a sport cable, like a bundle with your cable package, a lot of times those bundles explicitly exclude local teams. So if you pay to watch baseball games, you can watch every baseball game except the ones that are played by your home team without some kind of upcharge.
That's gross.
Right. So I'm not entirely sure. I didn't completely understand. They said they're going to have 2 games on Friday nights. They said exclusive games, so not found anywhere else. But it doesn't sound like it's a deal where I'm going to be able to watch like all of my home team baseball games. Like I would love for one easy place to do that. But yeah, this is kind of a good dipping their toes in the water in live sports, and I hope that it only expands in the future, because that could be a really cool niche that Apple TV Plus has that some of these other streaming services don't.
I hope that there is no war over streaming sport content coming or in the future, because right now in Australia, it's better than it's ever been, because we have like one cable TV provider, and they just have an over-the-top streaming service which you can subscribe to, like $25 a month, and you basically get everything you want to watch. There's the odd bits and pieces that are only on like free-to-air TV, which is still free, but slightly annoying because you have to have an antenna and plugged into a TV and blah blah blah. But yeah, I just dread some sort of war that splinters off all the sports into suddenly Netflix has got sports and TV Plus has got sports and HBO's got sports. I do not want that situation to happen. So
in the US at least, Disney owns ESPN, which is like the major sport network that most major sports are already broadcast on. So I could certainly see a battle between Disney and Apple for at least content in the US.
Sounds like it might benefit you guys, but it would be it wouldn't benefit us here.
Right. Not until they get cricket. Or rugby or whatever it is you watch.
Both, but cricket's more of the national sport.
Okay.
And Australian Football League, just known as football.
Which is soccer, right?
No. Soccer is soccer. That's something that the US and Australia has in common. We call the European football soccer.
Really?
And we call football our own national football sport, which are 2 different things.
Is your football similar to American football, or is this a different sport entirely?
I mean, it's got a... What do you call the shape of the ball? It's like...
I don't know.
It's that sort of shape, although not exactly. And it involves kicking and running and tackling. So it's...
Sounds similar.
Similar? Yeah. But it's also extremely different, of course. Once you get to the nitty-gritty, like with anything.
A football is a prolate spheroid.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. All right. And that was surprisingly it for Apple TV Plus. I guess not surprisingly. That's just the one major update with sports. And then we moved on.
Moved on to the iPhone 13.
The iPhone 13, which...
Yeah, that's what we moved on to, wasn't it?
Yep. Which I'm pretty proud of this one. My green prediction for the iPhone 13 came true, which was very out of left field at the time I made the prediction. The couple days leading up to the keynote after our show came out, there did start to be rumors that the phone was going to be green. But I would say that ahead of all those rumors, I said there was going to be a green iPhone.
You called it.
Mm-hmm.
Extra point to you.
And that's it. Although kind of cool, for the first time this year, the Pro iPhone also got a color refresh with an Alpine Green, which I said at the time of my prediction I was hoping they were going to be minty greens because I'm not a fan of dark greens. So these don't appeal to me, which is good news because I would hate a mid-year color refresh and they give it like the best color and then I feel like I'm missing out.
Yeah, it would have been an absolute disaster.
Uh-huh. I'd be trying to sell my iPhone right now. After that was the iPhone SE, which lined up exactly with what you and I predicted.
It got the A15, so it got the latest SoC. It got 5G.
Mm-hmm.
They bumped the price by $30. So there's definitely that seems to be the theme with iPhones recently. New model comes out, bump the price by $30.
Right. Yeah, I guess that 5G modem is pretty pricey because I can't see any other reason that it would have gone up in price.
Mm-hmm.
And not millimeter wave 5G, so not the ultra fast 5G that the 13s have.
I wonder if millimeter wave 5G has a future. There's not a lot of talk about it anymore.
Right.
There certainly hasn't been any rolled out in my area.
I mean, there's the few places that it's fleshed out, like sport stadiums and things like that, where if you go watch a baseball game or a football or basketball game, you pretty much can get millimeter wave all inside of there, which I think is valuable. But as far as like day-to-day use, I don't think I've ever come across millimeter wave signal.
There was that one time you were sitting in the parking lot outside an Apple store that you got it.
That's true. Yeah, but I had to stay still in that one spot to use it.
Couldn't even turn your back to it, huh?
No, you really can't. You can't have a wall or anything blocking. Like, you have to have line of sight with the transmitter for it to have a steady connection.
It just sounds more and more like a niche technology that's possibly not even going to be in the non-pro iPhones next year.
I mean, I agree that it's not necessary in the non-pro iPhones, but I don't know how you sell that downgrade. I guess most people don't care.
Most people don't care, and it's only a thing in North America too. Maybe even isolated to the United States. I don't know if Canada got millimeter wave. Australia didn't get any iPhones with it.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I don't know then. They did also explicitly call out for this new iPhone SE that they were able to get better battery life as both a factor of the A15, but also they said they redesigned the internals somewhat to put a bigger battery in it.
Yeah, that's like something we were contemplating.
Mm-hmm.
Did they say the phrase same great all-day battery life?
I don't think that exact
down.
phrase was said.
Yeah, I'm sure I would have written it down if I'd heard it.
But yeah, I'm glad to hear they did something, because that was definitely the weakest point of the last generation SE.
There's certainly been some complaints about the SE and how for not too much more money, you could just get like an actual modern phone from a different company, like a Galaxy phone, basically the same price, and yet it's got like 3 cameras and a huge battery and an edge-to-edge screen. What are your thoughts on that?
What Samsung phone can you get that for $430? That seems squarely in the mid-range phones for them, like their A-series phones that Samsung makes.
A53 5G.
And that has the 3 cameras and everything?
$450 phone. Does it have the edge-to-edge screen? Yeah, edge-to-edge screen.
Interesting.
4 cameras, 32 megapixel, 5,000 milliamp hour battery, and double the storage of the SE.
But probably a mid-range Qualcomm processor.
It's a 5 nanometer octa-core on the spec sheet I've just pulled up here.
Okay.
Whatever that means.
Yeah, I'm saying the same thing, but no actual call out on what it is. They're not saying it's not got like the what is it, the Qualcomm 888? Is that the latest processor?
I'm so out of the loop when it comes to Snapdragons.
Yeah. I think that Apple has their own niche market here. That there's people buying the SE because it has the old design. Certainly for, I'd say, some of their older users, it's really nice to have that one button that's like, it doesn't matter what's happening. If I'm lost in my app or I don't know how I got where I am, I can just press this one button and I'm back on the home screen.
It's even simpler than the swipe up gesture because even when the phone's in landscape mode, the button's still in the same place.
Right, and you don't have to swipe twice if you've got like full screen content that's like hijacking those swipe controls, and that can definitely be confusing if you don't know exactly how those gestures work. So I think the home button has a place, and I think for some customers that's a selling point. I do think, however, though, that this probably is the last device, like last iPhone with a home button we'll see. I think if there's an SE4, it's probably going to be the full screen design by that point.
The legs in this SE3 are going to run for a long time because, A15 and 5G. Well, I can't see the average user needing an upgrade on that for 5, 6, even 7 years, something crazy like that.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, realistically, like by the time this phone stops getting iOS updates, it'll probably be 2030. Like people are going to be using this phone for a very long time, which is almost a little disappointing. Again, as an app developer, you're going to have to continue targeting this smaller screen, kind of this old use case for a very long time still.
But this smaller screen size is the zoomed in size that people run on the bigger phones. So,
okay. So it's not
a bit of an
bad.
accessibility win.
Yeah. So
did you fall off the bed?
No, did it sound like I fell off the bed?
It sounded like you fell away from the microphone for a second.
Sorry, I leaned back slightly in my chair. I'm very much don't have a feel for what the optimal range of responsiveness on this Blue Yeti is.
I'll just compress the hell out of it, all right?
Oh, perfect. You put a note on here. Gear.club Stradale? What is that? I have no idea what this is.
Yes, Stradale. Oh, they just kind of chucked in a new Apple Arcade game announcement during this part of the keynote.
Okay.
Gear Club Stradale, or Gear Club, is already a racing game on the App Store.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like chronically pushes you towards paying for stuff and microtransactions and all that nonsense. So I thought this was notable because I don't think there are any like even semi-serious racing games on Apple Arcade.
Mm-hmm.
And this is still very arcadey, but I guess it suits the name of the platform, Apple Arcade. But yeah,
Okay.
it'll be nice to have a half decent racing game as part of the service.
I remember that demo. I just didn't realize that was a new game that they were showing off.
Yeah, I'm not sure how new it will be over the current Gear Club on the App Store.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it might just be the same engine and different tracks minus the in-app purchases. But yeah, we'll find out, I suppose. I can't remember when they said it was coming out.
Those racing games are popular on the iPhone. I mean, the Asphalt series has been around for the whole existence of the App Store.
Yeah, you've got Asphalt, you've got Real Racing, Autosport.
Need for Speed has some decent mobile apps. Yeah.
That's it, yep.
All right. I think that's it for iPhone SE. It only comes in 3 colors. Of course, their new silver and space gray alternatives, Midnight and Starlight, and then Product Red.
Mm-hmm.
And then iPad Air.
Was there anything that we didn't predict?
I don't think we didn't predict the M1 chip coming to iPad Air. I think we both said A15.
Yes, we did. That's right.
This is... I don't fully get it. I mean, it really makes the differentiation between the iPad Air and the iPad Pro much smaller. There's only a few things the Pro has that the Air doesn't anymore. And the price points are very close. But it's also sets kind of a weird precedent because like my iPad mini has an A15 in it, which means that on some things like single core tasks, my mini is going to be faster than the Air because the M1's based on A14 cores.
Yeah, true. But the mini is, I guess, more of a single tasking machine with the smaller screen and probably less likely to use slide over and split screen and all that.
That's very true. And I did see an interesting rumor in the last week. I don't remember who it's from. It wasn't someone that I heard of before, so I doubt it's extremely credible. But someone shared what they said was some screenshots of internal iOS build showing iPads running windowed applications, fully floating windowed, and they said that it was only going to work on M1 iPads.
Yeah, I read that post on Reddit, and there was a lot of skepticism
Right.
in the comments about why exactly it would require an M1 to do something like that.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't seem like that should be necessary.
Because the other SoCs are perfectly capable of multitasking as well.
Yeah, as demonstrated by the A12Z in the developer transition kit.
Mm-hmm. And back on the first thing you said, I've heard a lot and read a lot about this like huge crossover between the iPad Air and the iPad Pro now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we need to start thinking about it a slightly different way. Because there's another product that Apple does where there's a lot of crossover between the non-Pro and the Pro. And that's the iPhone.
Uh-huh.
So what if we just pretended that the iPad Air was just called the iPad, and then you had the iPad Pro next to it, and they obviously share like nearly all the same features with each other, except the Pro just has like the few niceties on top.
Right. No, I think that would be, if they could somehow make that transition, it makes all the sense in the world. Because
we're just going to have to pretend, because they're never going to rename them.
Yeah, because iPad mini is not the mini version of iPad. It's the mini version of iPad Air.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, I completely agree. I think that Air should be iPad, and then the existing iPad should be like iPad SE.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
I guess it's just history that we've, the way history, or the way that the iPads evolved, that we ended up with this stupid naming, and we're just going to have to pretend that iPad Air is just the non-Pro good iPad.
Yeah, and not just iPad, Mac is the same way. There's a lot of brand recognition behind the Air suffix now, and it's kind of become synonymous with Air is like the one most people should buy.
Oh, I didn't think of it from that perspective. So just chucking Air on the iPad, people think that that's the one to buy.
Right, because everyone goes for a MacBook Air, almost everyone. I've got thoughts about how they should rework their Mac lineup as well.
Okay.
In maybe we'll get to that in the Mac section.
Sure. Okay. So back to the new iPad Air 5th Gen, M1, and then center stage. So I got the new 12 megapixel front camera, which follows you around.
Mm-hmm.
It got 5G.
Yep. Again with no millimeter wave, so that's a Pro exclusive.
Mm-hmm. 2 times faster USB-C. What's that about?
Well, this is interesting because the Pro got the M1 chip, and so then it got a Thunderbolt port. But on the Air, it's still a USB-C port. They've just upped the bandwidth from 5 to 10 gigabits a second. So that's another differentiation between the Air and the Pro.
What do you get exactly with the Thunderbolt port?
Compatibility with some very niche accessories like Thunderbolt hard drives.
Uh-huh. And the throughput that goes along with having it, using that tech.
Yeah, I don't know what Thunderbolt 4 is at. It's like 40 gigabits a second or something.
It's got to be such a select group of people who are using an iPad and requiring Thunderbolt 4 speeds.
Right. Yeah, that was more of a feature they just added because they could with the M1 chip.
Sounds good. Sounds pro.
Yeah, exactly.
I was kind of disappointed to see the capacities didn't change. So it's stuck at 64 and 256, and there's no option to get 512, even a lowly 512.
Right. Yeah, I would have loved to see both those move up to maybe a 128, 512 configuration options. Because, 64 is still too small for me. And even 256 is too small when I start thinking in the context of, like, this is going to be my personal computer. Now, as a secondary device, it's fine. But if I wanted to have all my files and my photos and stuff on there, 256 wouldn't even be close to enough.
You're going to be turning on optimized storage for everything. I was thinking along the lines of this is a perfectly capable video editing machine, but I mean, once you've got like your stuff on there, you might have only 128 gig left to like chuck a video on there that you're producing, and 128 gig of video is not that many minutes.
Yeah. Well, that's
like 10 minutes of high quality video.
Only Pro iPad owners edit video.
Apparently.
So, yeah, I'm disappointed in that. There's lots of people saying that I saw lots of comments to the effect that 64 is not enough in 2022. And I don't think that is true. I think there's plenty of people that could get by just fine on 64 gigabytes, especially if they left optimized storage on.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think myself as a power user could probably survive. I think I'd be at 64 gig, like no free space nearly all the time, but I think I would survive on it as long as optimized everything was on. So sure, a casual user should be able to live with that.
Yeah. Just checking my iPad mini now, I'm only using 53 gigabytes on it. So even me, who's less concerned about optimizing storage because I've got the 256 model, I'm only using 53 gigabytes.
There you go.
Most of the colors stayed the same, but they did refresh the blue color to be much more saturated. I like it quite a bit at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've seen some of these pictures online of people posting the old blue iPad Air next to the current one, but the current one makes the old one look like it's just silver. Like you can't tell it's supposed to be a blue iPad.
Yeah, it was pretty faint amount of blue, wasn't it?
Right.
I didn't see any side-by-sides, but it wouldn't take much dye to exceed the last one.
Yeah, kind of the same way. I've got the purple mini, and you can only tell that it's purple in just the right light.
Going for $5.99 American dollars for 64 gig.
Same price point. And this
Same
is
great all-day price.
That's right. This is where the overlap gets close, because the iPad Pro, the 11-inch, starts at 256 gigabytes. So if you go spec for spec and you look at the 256 gigabyte iPad Air compared to the base iPad Pro, there's like $100 difference between those two devices. So the overlap is very significant right now between these two categories while we wait for a Pro update.
Is that anywhere near the overlap between the iPhones?
I think that's pretty close, right? Because it's like $100 jump up between every device.
So iPhone 13, $799.
Mm-hmm. For the base iPhone 13, and then the smaller iPhone Pro is $999.
$999.
So
yeah.
$200 more.
All right, so it's a little bit closer than that difference, but yeah, maybe that difference will increase with the next iPad Pro update because they didn't have the advantage, I suppose, of launching the non-Pro and the Pro side by side like they do with the iPhone.
Right, yeah. That's kind of what the iPad lineup has devolved to at this point, is like staggered updates throughout the year. So there's always like these points where they're a little closer and then they end up getting their differentiation later in the year.
Next in the keynote was the announcement of an iMovie update. I don't remember how they spliced this into the keynote. Can you refresh my memory?
I think the way they segued into it is here's a great way to use your new iPad Air with this new updated version of iMovie. And it had, I want to say a storyboard feature? Is that?
I think that's exactly what they called it, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that was. But they didn't sell what that was really going to include to me. They're just here's a person using iMovie with the new updated storyboard feature.
They did show a very brief on screen of what the storyboard would look like.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at this point, I'm basically just keen for iMovie to get any sort of significant update because it's really only had technical updates for quite a while now.
Right.
For dealing with HDR and HEVC and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's pretty much why I called it out in the keynote notes was, what it's getting updated to is less significant than the fact it's being updated at all. That is the most impressive part of that.
So iMovie currently has, it kind of has a storyboard, but it's a storyboard that's very defined to simulate a movie trailer. So It was novel for the first 6 months that it existed, but that was 15 years ago, I think. I'm possibly not even exaggerating because I'm sure they had this on...
The iPad's not 15 years old, but...
No, but iMovie on the desktop.
Oh.
I'm thinking back a long, long time. Anyway, I should look that up.
I remember when it came out because I made a very brief career out of acting like I was really good at trailers. A chorus I was singing with, and in fact, have gone back to sing with in the last couple of years now that I moved home. I put together a like a fake trailer for our chorus using that new feature when it came out, and everyone was so blown away with it. They wanted me to like show it as like a like the opener for our next show. Like the trailer would play and then the curtains would open. And so I did that, and then somehow, I don't know if it was word of mouth or someone was at the show or something like that, but other choruses like in the area saw it and then wanted to hire me to do something for them. So there was a very brief stint of time where people were like sending me their DVDs of like, here's every show we've put on for the last 5 years. Can you make a trailer for us out of this? And I would just drop them in iMovie, send them an $80 bill, and that was one of my easy ways to make money in high school.
Well done.
Mm-hmm.
Just while you were talking, I was looking for the oldest reference I could find to the iMovie trailer feature. I could find a reference from 2010, but when do you think you were making them?
I mean, that would be about right, because I was in high school 2009 to 2012.
Okay, that fits.
Yeah, and I know it came out when I was in high school, so it had to have been about that time. So 12 years. That's not too far off from your prediction. You said 15? Your estimation?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so it was a cool feature, but it gets stale pretty quickly, because once people have seen it a couple of times, you don't really want to see anything in that format again. So a storyboard, I haven't really seen exactly what it involves, but it would be a lot more flexible for people to create different things. Hopefully just provide prompts for people who don't even know how to get started making something that flows into a movie. So I'm excited for it, at least to try it out.
Yeah, it'd be really cool if this is like an early precursor for Apple showing more interest in their kind of dying iLife suite of applications. I guess there's not much iLife left. Is iMovie the end of it? Because iTunes is gone, iPhoto is gone, iWeb and iDVD are gone. So maybe iMovie is all that's left from iWeb or iLife.
Can you really say iPhoto's gone?
I mean, I guess it lives on in spirit in the Photos app, but it used to be. You remember when the iPhoto app was a separate app from Photos on the iPad?
That was an absolute disaster, a workflow disaster. There was no way to make a decent workflow with that app.
Yeah, I remember oohing and awing over their demo when they showed it off. It was like, I think it was something they showed off with the first Retina iPad. They're like, now that you have Retina, you can do cool photo edits. And I thought it was so cool looking. But yeah, I never really got any use out of it. And then we get into the portion of the keynote where we were both pretty wrong.
No, that's not right at all.
That's not right?
I think you were bang on. Did you not say there would be no M2? And that was correct.
Mm-hmm.
And did you not also say that we would be getting a Mac Mini Pro with additional cooling?
Yeah. That's true. I did say that.
There is no better way to describe the Mac Studio than a Mac Mini Pro with better cooling. And of course, more ports, because that's what Apple does. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead a bit, but I just wanted to correct you because you were so right.
Okay. I just got the name wrong then.
That's it. We both slammed on the name. We didn't slam on it. We said there's no way that anything would be called Studio.
Right. Yeah, I thought the Studio was just a placeholder, but it seems like something they're going to be really leaning into in the coming years.
But the first thing they did talk about was the new M1. So the M1 Max can be joined to another M1 Max through a technology called Ultra Fusion.
Mm-hmm. That
was the marketing name for it. I can't remember what they actually called it. No, what the technical word for it is. But it's essentially two M1 Maxes that operate as a single CPU.
Right. Yeah, that's the biggest deal. Is like it's not being recognized as the system as two separate CPUs. It looks like one CPU and one GPU. So people optimizing their applications, or there's no additional optimization required for these chips, having to account for multiple CPUs. It's one chip as far as the computer's concerned, one metal device as far as the graphics are concerned.
Cool.
For people paying attention for the last couple of years, this isn't news, right? This is still very much in line with what we were expecting. This is the the Jade 2C die that was leaked a year ago. But it's cool to see it finally out, and pretty much exactly what you'd expect. Kind of just double everything from the M1 Max.
And they noted that this would be the last M1 variant.
Right, which does raise questions, right? Because the roadmap that I just referenced from a year ago also had something called the J4C die, which would be 4 M1 Maxes. So for them to explicitly say this is the last chip raises some eyebrows, especially with what they may put in the Mac Pro in the future. Now,
it could be dangerous to say this, but I think it's pretty obvious that they'll just use multiple M1 Ultras and they just will act as separate CPUs, that the computer will see them as 2 system on chips instead of 1.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. They're going to have Jade 4C die, and instead of saying we fused 2 together and it's a new chip, they're just going to say these are 2 chips. And it's not a new one, it's just 2 of the old one. So, I mean, they can, market their way around whatever. They can call it, they might not even call it an M1 chip, right? This could be their new Super Pro version that has the ability to access like expandable RAM and PCI slots. And so this isn't an M1, this is like their P1 or Pro 1 chip or whatever,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's really just a question of marketing of how they're going to do that once we get to that point.
Anything else on the M1 Ultra?
I mean, I said that it's the exact performance you expect out of 2 M1 Max, but just to clarify what that is, that's up to 128 gigabytes of RAM, 64 GPU cores, 32 neural net cores, 20 core CPU with 16 high performance cores and 4 high efficiency cores, and up to 8 terabytes of storage. So a very respectable chip, very impressive.
No slouch at all.
Nope.
Was it this point of the keynote where they went and compared the chip against all of its competitors, or did they do that during the Mac Studio part?
I think they got to Mac Studio and then we're explicitly comparing it against the 27-inch iMac and the Mac Pro.
All right. Well, let's move on to the Mac Studio topic then.
Mm-hmm.
So the Mac Studio, as I already described, it's the Mac Mini Pro with extra cooling. It's quite the little box, isn't it? None of that svelte sleekness of the Mac Mini. It's kind of it's still small next to a computer tower, but it's a lot bigger than a Mac Mini, and the fans account for basically all of that increase in height.
Right, yeah, the cooling inside of that computer is the majority of the interior. And it's very much like when you put it beside the new MacBook Pros that came out last year, it's like it's another reminder that, hey, Johnny Ive is gone. We can put ports on things again. Things can get bigger. So as much as I've seen some people say that it's maybe one of the uglier computers they've made, not everything they make has to be beautiful. Sometimes it can just be practical, and that's great. And it's not bad. I mean, it's still all one piece of like machined aluminum. It's not ugly by like market standards. It's just by Apple standards. It's not as pristine of an object as some of the things they've made in their history.
I think it just boils down to thinner things look better, and this is not as thin as the last one. It looks perfectly fine apart from that.
Right. Thinness, and it seems like Johnny Ive like refused to put ports on the front of things, right? Everything had to be behind the computer, so you didn't see wires hanging out of it or anything else.
Hallelujah. They put the SD card port on the front of the thing. So, I mean, the last Mac Minis didn't even have SD card readers, but the ones that did had them on the back, which is just ridiculous because you had to fumble around in the dark most of the time because I think all the backs were black.
Right.
There might have been a silver back, but I'm picturing a black back. So
yeah.
If you didn't have that area lit up, then you were fumbling around at the back trying to get your SD card in. And if you're doing that multiple times a day, it quickly adds up to many hours of frustration over the lifetime of the computer.
And
so chuck it on the front. Why not?
Yeah, most of those ports I could give them a pass for. Ethernet, power, even USB to an extent. It's like a lot of those things you plug in once and then you can forget it. But SD card is very much a port that you're plugging and unplugging frequently. So to put that on the back, The same with like the 27-inch iMacs. Always a headache. Try to reach back there and get your SD card plugged in.
Yeah, exactly. And the other ports on the front are USB-C / Thunderbolt, depending on the Ultra gets you Thunderbolt ports. Is that correct?
Right. Yep. Has more controllers for it. So, and then across the back, we've got 4 Thunderbolt ports, a 10 gigabit Ethernet port standard, 2 USB-A ports, which is impressive, HDMI
Yeah, so
2.0.
USB-A. It's got to be for legacy sort of purposes. So people, sometimes you get those little licensing dongles where you have to have a USB-A. It kind of looks like a key drive, but you need it in there to run software. And
Sure.
I think that's kind of what that's for.
Yeah, and why waste a whole Thunderbolt port on something like that, right? It makes complete sense. It's got HDMI 2.0 and then your highly impotent headphone jack as well.
Let me say it.
Okay. Go ahead.
And most importantly of all, I'm going to make this an ASMR session. High impedance headphone jack.
I'm so proud of you. You got it. Was that the first time that you've gotten that?
I think so. A high impedance headphone jack. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Runs 4 Pro Display XDRs and a 4K TV at the same time. I noticed that The Verge did trial this, although they didn't have 4 Pro Display XDRs, but they did have a couple of other monitors, and they plugged them all in, and the TV, and everything worked.
That's more screen than I could ever need. Although it does make me slightly jealous with my M1 computer that can only support 1 external display.
It can only support 1 external display.
The M1 chip can do 2 displays. So on the laptops, one of those is a laptop screen. So the M1 Mac Mini can have 2 displays plugged in, but the Air and the Pro both can only have 1.
Yeah, I was thinking about your Mac Mini, concerned that could only support 1 display.
Yeah, Mac Mini would be okay. And then coming in at what I would call very reasonable prices, you can get the Mac Studio with the M1 Max for $2,000, or with the Ultra for $4,000. And then even if you want to completely max out your configuration with the most RAM, the most SSD storage, that only tops out at $8,000, which is well below. Like you're just past the threshold of what a Mac Pro starts at, and you are dominating it performance-wise in most categories.
And the maxed out Mac Pro was getting to like 100,000 or something crazy like that.
Was it really that high? I was thinking, well, maybe Australian, because I was thinking it was like 60 or 60,000 something US.
I could be misremembering, but I thought it was around that. But in any case, it's absolutely nowhere near it.
Right, yeah. Much more reasonable across the board.
What do you think about that 2,000 difference between the Max and the Ultra, though?
I think it makes some sense, especially, I don't know if you've listened to the latest episode of ATP, but they discussed how the Ultra was manufactured and the issues with chip yields on that, because it's not just any 2 M1 Max chips put together. They have to be 2 fully working M1 Max chips that are already side by side on the silicon wafer that the chips are printed on. So I could see from a yield perspective, like that actually could be a much more expensive chip to make.
Okay.
And honestly, from the performance standpoint, you're getting double the performance or double the money. And 4,000, like as far as like dollars per whatever unit of performance you're measuring, I think is still extremely reasonable compared to what their lineup in the past has looked like.
Okay.
What about you?
Yeah, seems like a huge jump, but when you say you get twice the performance for twice the money, hard to argue with that, isn't it?
Right.
There was some discussion about, was this the Mac Mini Pro or the Mac Pro Mini? But I think it's fairly obvious that it's the Mac Mini Pro, because what makes a Mac Pro, well, at least historically, was you can swap out parts and you can expand it and you can put things in there, and it comes in this big normal-ish computer case.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why there was even an argument about this being potentially a Mac Pro Mini, because everything about it is Mac Mini Pro.
You know, I think if we have to choose between one of those two things, I agree with your logic. But I have to say that I think it's its own product. Like outside of the fact that they literally, created a new product category for it. In my mind, what a real Mac Mini Pro would be is just take the existing Mac Mini, put the M1 Pro in it. I feel like right now, with looking at the lineup, that's the missing product, because there's no configuration you can get an M1 Pro in a desktop setting. You can only get that in the MacBook Pros right now. And I feel like the cooling capacity of the existing Mac Mini should be sufficient for just that smaller chip.
Well, it's in a laptop, isn't it? So surely.
Right. So I would love to see them do that. And then that can be, I mean, I don't know that they'd call it Mac Mini Pro, but that can be like their space gray Mac Mini, that high-end one they always have. That was a product I was hoping to see. I am hoping to see to fill that gap sometime in the near future.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. And yeah, neither of us thought it would be called the Mac Studio, but I really don't mind the name now that it's here.
No.
People who buy this computer are probably going to have it in a studio, if that's what you want to call like the office room where a semi-creative person or a very creative person is going to put this. Like you might, like if you're a graphic designer or a video maker, you're in an office, but you may as well call it a studio because you're a super cool person.
The only comment I would have on that is I feel like it's, again, Apple's fallen into the trap of like, our product has to have some kind of cool suffix. Because what this really is it's just the Mac. It's a Mac. And you have the mini version and the Pro version, but this is the middle ground Mac computer. It didn't need a suffix. It could exist as just a Mac.
Okay.
But yeah, as far as their marketing goes, I think they did a good job selling the Pro name and the use cases for it. So I'm on board with Studio. That makes sense.
Well, you'd better be, because the next product is also called Studio, and that was the Studio Display. So basically, they had this huge backlog of 5K iMacs, and they thought, we've got to repackage this screen into something more useful. So they ripped out the displays, chucked out all the Intel i5s and i7s straight into the bin, didn't even recycle them, and they wrapped it up in a nice little shell with new webcam, new speakers, and even an A13 inside.
Yeah, and not to get too far into the technical right off the bat, but that A13, the Mac Studio itself, is running apparently a full version of iOS.
Yeah, you can check the version number. It aligns with the current iPhone OS.
Right, yeah. Which, as far as the use case of that, we can get to it a bit. The Studio Display has a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera with also center stage. It has a 3 mic array for what their studio quality audio they've pitching for the last couple years, and then 6 speaker surround sound with spatial audio. And apparently that's all the A13 is driving, which seems like massive overkill.
There have been a lot of complaints about that front-facing camera, though. Well, the camera, I don't have to call it front-facing because there is no rear-facing camera. But it's getting pretty bashed up in the press. Apple's apparently going to update it with a software update. That's yet to surface.
Right.
For now, it's doesn't look anything like the same camera in an iOS device.
Yeah, which makes no sense because it is the same camera from their iOS devices with the same
and it
chip.
kind of is in an iOS device.
Right, the same ISP. There's no reason it should look as bad as it does. So when Apple comes out and says it's a software bug that's causing that, I believe them because all the hardware has already been proven at this point. But it is weird that we've gotten to this point where it's like in the hands of reviewers and it looks so much worse than like even their webcams and their laptops.
Almost seems like this product was rushed out in the end.
Right.
Unless it was like a last minute bug and it was fine up until 15.4.
Oh, yeah, potentially. That seems like maybe the most likely thing, because someone has to have turned the webcam on at some point in building the monitor and said, oh, something's not right here.
Maybe it was so easy just to hook up this chip and this camera that they'd never even turned it on. It was just like plug and play.
Right. It's funny that this monitor has a better processor in it than the 4K Apple TV, because that has the A12X in it, or A12Z, one of those two. But then just a monitor for running a webcam has the A13 in it. So,
I guess a few other of the specs. It's 27 inches. It's 5K. It's missing a lot. It's stuck at 60 hertz refresh rate.
It has 600 nits of peak brightness, which means it doesn't have HDR because there's no local dimming zones.
Right, no local dimming, no HDR,
no ProMotion. Yeah. It's very much exactly the screen from the 27-inch iMac put in a monitor, which is exactly what everyone's been asking for since Apple stopped making monitors in 2016, maybe even a little earlier. But at the same time, this exact screen in this configuration has existed in an iMac since 2014. So it's almost decade-old screen technology. And, at some point you just assume that they would have improved it in some way since then.
Yeah. The only reassurance that I take from it is that Apple is, again, interested in the not extreme high-end monitor market. So if this is them putting their toe in, then maybe next year, and I know there are already rumors about, the next studio display, but
right,
maybe next year they'll put their ankle in too, and we'll get something with, at least local dimming, or, a pro version that isn't the XDR.
Yeah, exactly what you just alluded to is like right on the heels of this display coming out, there was multiple rumors about, well, they're also working on a display that's 7K, and they're working on a version of this display with mini LED technology, and that's going to be out in a few months, which I don't believe the few month prediction, but it seems like there's lots of versions of this display somewhere in Apple's R&D department, and maybe we'll see one of them at some point in the near future. But yeah, as a first step, it's okay. And I just want to say, on the last episode of the podcast, you said that you really hoped they'd release a display because you would buy it immediately because you need one so badly.
Yeah, so I think I might have also mentioned a price that I was hoping it to come in at, which was $1,000. Australian?
What is that? It's like 2,000 Australian, isn't it? Somewhere around there.
Yeah, but then you got to add tax on top of that. So I'm looking at 2,499.
Ooh, okay, that's too much for this display.
Yep.
And you have to add in, that's something we didn't call out, there's a $400 add-on for a height adjustable stand, which I would definitely go for if I was ordering this display.
At the non-adjustable stand height, it's basically an iMac height, right? So
it's worse than iMac height because you don't have the chin below it.
Chin.
Yeah, it's actually lower than an iMac.
Okay. I would have said an iMac would be fine, but without that chin, it might be pushing it.
Right. Yeah. I think I would have to go for that. So it's nice to see that a stand is only $400 instead of $1,000, though. So we're making progress. So also as part of this display announcement, they kind of re-released their Pro accessory lines with that silver and black color combo for their keyboard, trackpad, and mouse that initially existed alongside the Mac Pro, and they only discontinued, it feels like, a few months ago, just to then bring back. It's got the newer, slightly more rounded corners. It's got Touch ID on the keyboard now, but it's the same color scheme that we've seen since 2019.
Yeah, that'd be nice to have. It's also got 4 ports on the back, only one of them being a Thunderbolt 3 and providing basically as much power as you would want to your laptop plugged into that.
And then, USB-C ports, which also feels a little too bad. It seems like they could have put a better Thunderbolt dock in that monitor, like maybe provided a secondary Thunderbolt port to daisy-chain devices instead of having to. It kind of eliminates having a one cable solution. If you have any other Thunderbolt device you need to plug into your computer, you're going to have to use 2 cables at that point.
Yep.
It's got a nano texture option, just like the Pro Display XDR and the 27-inch iMac. Speaking of which, the 27-inch iMac was dropped from Apple's product lineup with the announcement of this monitor alongside the Mac Studio.
Yeah, that's right.
How do you feel about that? Do you think that's a permanent move for them, or do you think it'll be coming back in the coming years?
Ooh, that's such a tough question.
I guess I can start.
Go on.
I don't think it needs to. I think the iMac update they did last year, where they bumped the size to 24 inches, is a good middle ground computer. And for someone who needs a bigger display, I would assume at that point that it's going to be for more of a pro kind of application or a heavier workload, in which case they may very well want to upgrade their computer at some point in the future and not have to buy a new monitor kind of as a result of doing that. So I could really see the Mac Studio filling this niche and the iMac being kind of back to what it used to be as very much consumer-only device. It's not a prosumer device. It's just like the basic version of a Mac that people who want the easiest computer possible can buy.
Yeah. When I was doing more like IT work on the road, nearly everyone who had an iMac had the 27-inch version. And that could be because a lot of my work was with graphic design companies.
Mm-hmm.
But it just seemed like such an insanely popular product. And I mean, I guess they were buying it for the biggest screen and the power, and that's what the Mac Studio is giving them. I don't know how much of the all-in-oneness really appealed to a graphic design business. Like maybe they don't care at all about that part of it.
Right. I mean, there was a long time where if you wanted, the best performance without getting all the way up to Mac Pro, you had to get the 27-inch iMac. Like
that was it.
You couldn't get a Mac Mini with an external display and get the same performance. So I agree that I've seen a lot of 27-inch iMacs around, but I don't think they were selling for the all-in-one factor. I think it was other factors that were selling it.
Personally speaking, though, I absolutely love a single cable computer because you've got your iMac, you got the screen, all you need to do is plug in a power cord, and then all your peripherals are wireless as well. It's just a very elegant computer.
Right. Yeah, I'm
you're not going to get that with the Mac Studio because you already have to connect the box and the screen.
You could use a sidecar to an iPad or something.
From a Mac Studio to an iPad?
Right. Well, there's no reason. I mean, I assume the Studio Display doesn't have wireless chips in it, but if it did, you could totally like sidecar to the Studio Display.
What do you mean it doesn't have wireless chips in it?
The
display. Sorry,
the Studio Display
of the computer.
Right.
Yeah, sorry.
If they would have, I guess I'm not sure how much of like an iPhone or iPad's interior they brought over, but I assume it's just the A13. But if it had like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, you could totally wirelessly, if Apple wanted to allow it, that'd be trivial for them to implement.
That could be cool.
Yeah, it would be cool, but very silly to introduce any latency just so you don't have one cable running like 1 foot across your desk.
Look, I like things the way I like things, David.
I mean, I agree with your assessment of simple computers. I really, really like the existing iMac. If I do make my under the stairs cupboard podcasting studio, that's the computer I'd love to put down there. But yeah, I don't think that's what the pro market is worried about. I think the studio is gonna fill that niche better. It's more expensive up front, but then not having to worry about incurring the extra cost of buying a screen along with every computer upgrade, I think is going to be a real selling point.
I think you're probably right. I suppose that takes us to like the last interesting part of the keynote, which was the statement that they only have one product to go, Mac Pro, but that's for another day. So we are definitely getting a Mac Pro.
Yeah, I think it's surprising that they call that out because they never really tease upcoming products like that. But I feel like they kind of had to, because if they hadn't said exactly that at the end of the keynote, everyone would assume the Mac Studio is the new Mac Pro.
Mm-hmm.
So Yeah,
or assume at the next announcement that we'd get a 27-inch iMac probably.
yeah, potentially that as well.
And I think a lot of people might have not bought the Mac Studio because they were waiting for the new, bigger iMac. So it's like a silver bullet to all the hearsay and rumors and speculation.
Yeah, I kind of wish they'd do that more. It's like to curb some of that speculation. It's nice to understand exactly where we stand. But yeah, it makes me very excited for what their plans for Mac Pro are. Hopefully we see that at WWDC. Seems like that would be a good time.
And what that Mac Pro's going to be is anybody's guess.
Right. Yep. It has to have more RAM. Like of everything the Studio lacks that the Mac Pro has, the max RAM configuration difference is the biggest between 128 gigabytes to 1.5 terabytes. Like they have to resolve that more than anything.
Yeah. That reminds me as well, I wanted to bring up the video, the graphics performance between the new M1s and some other vendors' graphics video cards, because I think Apple said they outperformed a 3090 and consumed 200 watts less power doing so. But a lot of review sites or testing people who run these sorts of tests now that they have them aren't finding that those statements to be true.
Right. Yeah, I mean, to an extent, this is to be expected, and they kind of did it with their last chips as well. They found like the few benchmarks where like their built-in encoders help them beat out these highest end consumer graphics cards, and then used like those couple benchmarks to say, look how much faster we are, when in kind of a more standard use case outside of like video encoding, as far as just like raw compute power, they're still, not at that level.
Yeah, I guess companies will always massage a benchmark to show what they want it to show, put their things in the best light.
Right.
I did see just like a general user, like a normal person, do some reporting, do some comparisons on Reddit earlier today, and they seem to be involved with photo and video production.
Okay.
And in nearly all cases, their Mac Studio outperformed their fairly modern, water-cooled, 1,000-watt beast tower computer.
Yeah, I mean, as far as performance per watt goes, no one's even close to what Apple's doing. But that becomes significantly less important when we're talking about chips that are in desktop computers. People aren't quite as worried about using a little extra power in those cases. It is worth noting, even in their raw compute tests, the M1 Ultra is almost exactly half of what the 3090 is. So theoretically then, this dual M1 Ultra chip that we could see in the Mac Pro would very much rival the 3090, like across the board, and not just in these specific scenarios that Apple is highlighting.
But that's only one 3090, and I assume you can crossfire them together, or whatever modern parlance is.
Yeah, I'm sure you can. I'm not much of a PC builder, but yeah. And even the Mac Pro, right? You can get like up to 4 GPUs in it straight from Apple. So it's really yet to be determined how they're going to resolve the issues for people who have use cases where they just need the most GPU compute possible.
Yeah.
But that's for another day.
I am James VDM on Reddit and Twitter.
And I'm Jellywoot on Reddit and Twitter.
And show notes can be found at reddit.com/r/bluebubblepod.
You remembered. I was really... I thought for a second there you were going to say our old subreddit.
Well, you can go there and find the link to the new one as well.
Yeah.
For anyone who's still subscribed to the old one.
The subreddit that shall not be named.
And cannot be named. It's almost impossible to say it out loud.
Oh, speaking of that, We got a very nice comment on our new subreddit in the last week. I don't know if you saw, but I wanted to call it out. Let me pull it up.
I didn't see it. Well, I made the post, so why didn't I get an orange red for it?
It's kind of a new feature of creating a subreddit. It makes like a lounge that's pinned to the top where people can just get in there and talk, and that's where it's posted. The user Coffee Addict 76 said, "Nice work on the rebranding, guys. Looking forward to seeing how the next 100 episodes evolve."
Nice.
So at least one person.
Thanks for the comment, Coffee Addict.
Yeah, thank you. At least one person appreciated the rebrand. So that's good to hear.